technical difficulties going on, guys. Stop doing it again. Well, things happen.
You do.
So welcome to Book World: The Great Escape. I'm CJ Peterson, and my co-host is author Michael Scott Clifton, and we're going to be talking world building today on Book World. So before we start, Mike, how was your week?
Man, I had a very busy but very successful week. It started with our book launch last Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
and the Con Hour with Greg Kelso,
It's
and
conversations.
the
There's a difference.
conversation. I'm sorry, the conversation with Greg Kelso,
Mhm.
and but the best part, and of course, we had talked with Danielle McDonough on dystopian fiction
Mhm.
uh, on Wednesday at the last Book World podcast. And but this weekend I was at the Arkansas Comic Con, and Melly and I went, and it's in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's a 2-day Comic Con, and it was fantastic. It was great. Last year I sold out of books on some of my books, so I made sure to bring extra books this time, and I sold out of another. I not only sold out of those books, but I sold out of some more books as well, even though I brought extra books in anticipation of needing those. So it was fantastic. And I also sold out of some of the
True.
what's that?
So you sold out again, even with extra.
Yeah, so I sold out again, and I also sold out for the first time on some of the custom made bookmarks that we have. I sold out of two of those, and it was awesome. It was a great con, and I matched my record on the most books I've ever sold at one of these events,
Nice.
and it was awesome. And of course, it was VXV, which is the successor of AVC AvCon. Uh,
Mhm.
Always does a fabulous job. Matter of fact, when we got there Saturday, we drove. We got up early Saturday morning and drove. It's about a 3-hour drive from Mount Pleasant to Little Rock.
Mhm.
And anyway, when we got there, it was a little before or about 8 o'clock, and the Comic Con doesn't start until 10. There was already a line of people well over a block long to get in 2 hours before the Comic Con was even starting. And it was the same way the next day as well. So
So this
there
was
was a one in Little Rock. Yeah.
Mhm. Nice.
So it was awesome, and we did very well. And I got to meet. Uh, I did the uh, I did the CJ Peterson thing, and I started taking some pictures of some of the people
Oh, I'm
had.
so proud of you. I sound like, go, Mike.
So I mean, I didn't do it all, but if they bought like one young lady, she bought 7 of the 8 books
Mhm.
or 6 of the 7 books that I have published. So I took a picture with her and had a guy that had bought the Janus Witch, and I can't remember now, or was it the Treasure Hunt Club? I can't remember now if it was at the day before or at another Comic Con that he had bought a book from me. But anyway, he came back and he bought the Janus Witch because he liked the Treasure Hunt Club so well. And I mean, I had stories like that, 2 or 3 or 4. And CJ, and any authors that may be watching this, when you get people that come back the
Mhm.
second or third time and they tell you how much they like your books,
It makes
that's
sense.
it does. It's worth
Mhm.
more than the money they're paying for the books. Trust me. But yeah, it was great. And like I said, I sort of uh, you know followed my mentor here on the pictures of the fans and the books. I drafted the CJ Peterson way. And took pictures of some of the people that bought my books, and it was awesome. CJ, it really was.
Awesome. I'm so excited for you. How did your book launch go for Cabin of the Veil Queen?
Well, um, I thought it went well. I really
You
appreciate
had
the
a few
authors.
technical difficulties in the beginning,
Right,
but
right.
how did the overall launch go for you?
I thought it went well, and I really appreciated the authors that we had that were part of the book launch, and I appreciated them. And they were giving away free books, and they were helping me as an author, as well as with your book launch. Authors helping authors with their book launch, and I really appreciated that. And I I sold uh, a good amount of books online, I think,
Mhm.
for me anyway. I mean, you know how if you if you're an indie author and you have done this for any period of time, it doesn't matter how well your ads and the stuff that you do marketing on Amazon. There's times where it's like the Mojave Desert. There's nothing living, and
Mhm.
then out of the blue, you'll just have a spike, and and you'll sell a lot of books, and that's what happened this time. Uh,
Awesome.
but
Now
but anyway, it was great.
you also did it in conjunction with a book blog tour, which I think is still going on, correct?
Right. And on the Lone Star Literary Life book blog tour, there are two, let's see, three, I think three tour stops left if you count today.
Mhm.
And there are some great giveaway. There are some great giveaway prizes. A complete ebook set of the Conquest the Veil series
Mhm.
that you can join the getaway. To be a participant, and there's a free autographed copy, physical autographed copy of the Cavern of the Veil Queen, and there are several ebook copies that will be given away of Cavern of the Veil Queen as well. So
Awesome.
there's one, two, I think there's five prizes that can be won by simply going to any of the tour stops and entering into the giveaway. There's no obligation. You're not going to be getting spam emails from now until the end of time. You're just, you know, getting part of the
Venturing.
giveaway.
Good.
Right. Costs you nothing to
Mhm.
do that.
Very cool. So they can find this on Lone Star Literary Life's website,
Right.
and just go to where your little book blog tour
Right.
sign is. So very
And
cool.
and of course, I've also done the CJ thing on the social media. Although I will never, I'm a pale, pale, pale shadow of your prowess when it comes to social media,
You did really
and
cool. I'm very proud of you.
So, well, on any of those, and I appreciate that. If you look on my follow me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, you can find a link to the Lone Star Book Blog Tour for Cavern of the Veil Queen. It's very easy to do, and you just click on, and it'll take you to the tour and you blog tour, and you can, like I said, register for the giveaway for all of those five prizes.
Definitely. Well, for me, last weekend we did Anime Oklahoma. Some people know that my husband and I kind of help run different Comic Cons, and this was one of them. It was up in OKC, so that was fun. Enjoyed it a lot. We had 5 guests, tons of cosplayers, tons of artists and vendors. It was a real treat. And then on Tuesday, we did the launch of my book, Chain Reaction, last night. Yay! I'm so excited. We did really good. Several authors joined in. Patty Wiseman, who's currently watching, joined in. We had Jeff Craig, Lydia Mann, Jackie Smith, and ooh, one
Mike,
more.
Mike Wigington.
Wigington was the other one. Yep. Mike and Patty did a double header. They did both of ours. Um, but we did.
Thank you, Mike and Patty.
Yeah. Thank you. Patty says congratulations. Yeah, we did really good. I am super excited. There's been Caleb and Linda Pirtle did a blog on it. Great Book Deals has shown a light on it a couple of different times. Lone Star Lit shown a light on the beginning of September. We're going to be doing like a media shout out second week in October, so kind of double stacking stuff up. But I'm really excited because this one I actually did the cover myself. So I was very proud of myself. I actually did this book from go to woe. I did all the formatting, the cover, and everything. It's the very first book I've ever done that for. So I was pretty excited. But like right now, it is currently on Kindle for only 99 cents. So just look up Chain Reaction by CJ Peterson and it should pop right up and you can get it for 99 cents on your Kindle. However, bye. So it was really good. It was fun. And I couldn't have asked for a better team to help launch. And it was a treat.
And if I'm not mistaken, you also won an award for that novel, did you not?
Not for Chain Reaction yet because
Reaction.
it came
Okay.
out, but Appointed Time won first place for
Okay.
fiction
Okay.
in
Okay.
August. So yeah, there are some awards out there, but it's fun. Now for today, yes, people watching finally are like, please, book world building is what we're talking about today. World building is you have to have a balance We'll just start with that, with the balance of world building. When you go to build your world, there are several rules, but one of them is balance. Don't inundate the reader with too many facts
Hmm.
and
That's
too
right.
many details. A lot of times it's kind of like a slow reveal. So, for example, in yours, when you did yours, it was a brilliant way to do it. You took her from Earth to the planet Meredith. And so she's discovering the planet Meredith along with the readers at the same time. So you're not going, oh, this is this role, and this is this role, and this is that role. And you're kind of learning it with her, which is the ideal way to do it because you're introducing the reader to it at the same time. Now, before you even get to that point, though, you got to create this world. You have to create animals, you have to create the rules of law, and the rules of law are very, very important. Um, those are the ones that you cannot go against. And so when you make these rules, you have to stick to them. And a lot of times people, well, I can fudge it, it's fiction. It's like, no, if this is how your world works, this is how your world works. And your readers will call you out on it in a heartbeat.
Exactly right.
So, when you go to do I know some people it was given a really bad name, but Dungeons& and Dragons, D&D, is a great way to learn how to role build because you're building characters, you're building creatures, you're building an environment, and that's essentially what you're doing for world building. So, if you get your hands on one of those, it will kind of give you an idea. You can be like the dungeon master sort of thing and set your own up. Or there's other role-playing games that are out there that you can do the same thing too. I know one of the computer ones is like World of Warcraft. Is that what it is?
Mhm. Yeah,
That's the one you have to build the entire world for.
right.
But the computer doesn't let you go against the rules of law. So it's like you can't fudge that. And so I know for yours, it was a matter of instead of technology, you had magic.
Right.
What are some of those hard and fast rules? Do you have any advice to start?
Well, of course, we've talked about this before. You know how I feel about world building. It's obviously the key building block of fantasy. It's what makes fantasy a separate genre
Mhm,
uh, because world building is huge. It's what sets this genre apart from other fiction genres like historical fiction, westerns, et cetera, et cetera. There's also subgenres. Uh, you know, paranormal and urban fantasy and Arthurian fantasy, sword and sorcery, et cetera, et cetera. And the world that you build has to fit that genre or subgenre, especially if it's a subgenre and you're narrowing the
mhm,
uh, uh, the field, so to speak, concerning your book, your characters, and the rules as you stated.
mhm,
So the thing that I feel is most important about world building is what you've touched on already, and that is if you get caught up, and it's easy to do, if you get caught up in world building to the point where you are dozens, hundreds, in some cases, 100 to 200 pages into world building, okay,
mhm,
and you've neglected your characters, you've neglected your storyline, your
mhm.
character arcs, you're going to find that a good many readers, potential readers, are going to um, just they may read
Beach
they you get to a point where they just shut off, and they won't pick up books that you've written before. Now, there are successful authors, fiction, fantasy authors that have been able to do that.
Mhm,
Um, I would say that uh, Terry Goodkind, his Sort of Truth series, is that, and probably the best example I can think of is Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series.
mhm.
Um, but you have to have extraordinary patience. And I don't know that in today's fast moving world that a lot of readers have that kind of patience to slog through page after page after page
Yeah,
of
not any
world building.
yeah, in this instant society, you've kinda just gotta give them little bits.
Right.
Mhm,
And actually what you said about that, CJ, is I think key because the best kind of world building is when it's connected to the characters in your story and you're revealing it one step at a time, so the two they all go in tandem with each other. It's not
mhm,
always easy to do. It's harder to do it that way, but it's sometimes well, it's not sometimes, I think it's the best way. So I think the, I think world building has given fantasy a bad name, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, in concerning the past. Okay, the not too distant past. Um, I think I've shared this with you before. When I was a kid growing up, if you went into when we used to have bookstores, okay, the fantasy sci-fi section took up half the floor space. Just
Mm-hmm.
that one genre. And you flash forward to today, the few remaining bookstores left, but they're reflective of society's tastes. Uh, they're a very small category, but thankfully, and you know this as well as I do, thankfully, with the superhero genre, that's craze that's come out with DC Comics, Marvel Comics,
Mm-hmm.
superheroes. It's kind of reignited, and of course, you have look at the streaming services now. The Wheel of Time on Amazon, the Game of Thrones was huge, and now
Power of
the yeah,
started.
so it's reignited people's interest in the genre.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like you were saying, people's attention spans, particularly younger people,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they don't stretch to 100 pages of world building anymore.
No, not at all. But and the thing is, as the author yourself, you need to actually know more about the world than the reader ever will.
That's true.
But you can also inundate yourself. We were talking about this with Daniel last week. Is that you can inundate yourself with so many details that you never get to writing the story. So it's something you have to stop
Yeah.
building your world and actually write the story. And I think that's where pantsers may actually outshine planners in regards
Oh
to
yeah,
that,
right.
because we're kind of more in the lines of let's just jump into the story and get it over with, and kind of what I would do would be to write the rules down as I go. I'm not changing the rules. I'm writing them down as I hit them. Okay, I need to put a rule here. I'll use that. And that's how I would probably go about it. Whereas, some people need all the details of their world before they go forward. But again, you could get lost in the details yourself.
Right. And
And
the different genres, subgenres, I should say, of fantasy, like paranormal
Mhm.
and urban fantasy, actually don't require a lot of world building because basically you're in the real world, but like if it's a vampire, if it's for example, or witches, paranormal, uh, okay,
Angels,
car
demons.
right, cars run, combustion engines work just like they do any other time, electricity flows, light switches work, but
Mhm.
magic, you know, if it's witches and stuff, spells, things like that, they are able to do those things. And vampires, depending on which version of that, still have an aversion to sunlight, still drink blood, still, you know, cannot be killed by a mortal wound that
Mhm.
would kill any other person. So the world building there is basically more specific to the characters or the kind of characters that you have in your story.
The species themselves, yeah.
Right.
But even then, you still have rules of law, because the real world
Right.
has rules of law as
Right.
well. So
Like
you still
right.
have your confines in the world itself.
Yeah. A silver bullet kills a werewolf. Stake through the heart kills a vampire. Unless, of course, you've tweaked those rules,
Mhm.
to make it a little bit different.
You
I
can,
I'm
as long
still amazed.
as long as you
Yeah.
keep them.
I'm still amazed that the vampires in Twilight glistened in sunlight. So I don't know that I could ever go that route, but hey, it was a very successful series.
Mhm. Cannot falter for that.
Yeah.
She made it work. But yeah, you just have to, whatever the rules are for that particular species, yet you can tweak some. But part of it you have to pull out of history. Kind of like when I did this time travel book. A lot of it was historical. So certain things I could not change because they were already in history.
Right. Right.
Things I can play with. So you can have creative liberties up to a certain point.
Sure. Yeah.
But you have to have those hard and fast rules regardless of whichever planet you're on. I mean, even in Star
Mhm.
Trek, they had hard and fast rules. Star Wars had hard and fast rules. And there are some that are, in the gray area. But you have to know what those rules of law are, and you have to stick by them.
Now, the rules are very important in the sense that what you're talking about, because that's what actually is what your world building is based upon. So
Mhm.
you can't fudge on them and go back and forth and say, well, uh, you know, uh, uh, you can cast a spell only with with a wand.
Mhm.
Okay, and then in the two chapters down, the same person manages to cast a spell by manipulating their fingers. The rules, as you say, are the rules. That's
Mhm.
what makes the world what it is. In fact, it's the most important cornerstone of the story, of all.
Mhm.
And in that regard, and we've talked about this before, uh, fantasy and world building and the rules are very much a part of the gaming culture
Mhm.
that is so popular now because like World of Warcraft you mentioned, that started
Mhm.
out as a video game, okay, and it was produced into a movie, and probably there's a long list uh, of of games that have been converted into streaming series or movies, but in gaming you have characters.
Mhm.
In gaming you have a story,
Mhm.
but in gaming, you also have hard and fast rules.
Mhm.
That's what makes the game the game.
Yep.
Okay, and and those are all related to fantasy and world building that we're talking about today. It's on a different kind of level, but basically the moving parts are all the same.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Something if you get your hands on like an old Dungeons and Dragons game, or
Hmm.
there's any number of role playing games out there. So, if for advice for somebody who wants to jump into like the fantasy sci-fi genres, get your hands on one of those games and learn what it's like to actually build the world and figure out the rules of law, figure out who the characters are. How do I create this? How do I create that? Do they have cats on your planet? Do they have dogs on your planet? Do they
Yeah.
have something instead of it? You have to create these animals and you have to create these rules to figure out, okay, what limits can my character do and not do? What is there that I can play with and what can I not play with? And the best way to honestly do that is to get a hold of a role playing game. Without a
And if
doubt.
you're, and although we are both unapologetic pantsers,
Mhm. And
okay, yeah,
and a nerd.
unapologetic pantsers. Uh, they're the rules. If you're writing in the fantasy genre, you do have to have an idea about what your rules are going to be,
Mhm.
and you can't be halfway through your novel and then change the rules. Now that
Mm-mm.
is an aspect of you know of uh, of being a pantser that can get out of hand. If because there's some things that are hard and fast that you have to stay true to, otherwise you have a confusing novel and a confusing storyline. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. The rules need to be consistent regardless of how you present them.
Yeah, and it's not just environmental. You've got government. What type of government is it? Is it a dictatorship? Is it, you know, anarchy? Is it, what is it? You have government, you have, like you do have your climates, you do have your creatures that you have to figure out. You have to figure out your rules of law. You have to figure out, um, you know, how many characters, what's going on? Is the world at war? Environmentally type thing. Is the world at war? Culture wise, what's different? Is it, potentially, and you can pull from this world, is it like a Renaissance phase world? Is it
Mhm.
a steampunk type world? Is it World War II type world? Is it, current? Is it a future type world? There's a lot of things you can play with, but you have to figure out what your world looks like before you jump in. And
Right.
even the pantser in me says you got to figure it out before you jump in there because that's going to dictate your entire storyline. Now, the pantser in me would probably have about a page worth of notes and then would jump into it. But that's about the max that I would do. And then, like I said, if I ran across certain rules, I'd probably write them down as well. That's just because that's how I roll. But, you do have to do a little bit, and there's tons and tons of things that you can reference around our own world. We have every type of government around. We have, some work, some didn't work. Why didn't they work? Can you change that in your new world? There's tons of ways to look at a story and a storyline. I mean, there are 7 basic story ideas out there in the world, and just via genre and experiences and the author themselves, it turns them into billions, trillions different types of storylines.
And
So a
there's
lot of it,
right.
a
There's
lot
the
of,
mul-
go ahead.
there's the multiverse. I was just what you said, and that could be a whole separate topic we talk about at some point in the future.
Parallel
You
worlds.
know,
I mean,
yeah.
there's tons of ways you can go with this. But a
The
lot of it depends on, what is your character centered on in this?
and there's
What's
different
the not good? What's the
right.
road? What's the neutral? That's why I'm saying that something like Dungeons and Dragons, you have your character roles. Are they rogue? Are they neutral? Are they chaotic? You got to figure out, a lot of that stuff out before you go into it. And then as characters come up, you have to sort them out yourself.
I was going to add that there's like being the pantser part of the way we write.
Mm-hmm.
There's your world can start off like I like starting off in the real world, which I did in the Cavern of the or the Conquest of the Veil series, where you start off in the real world and you introduce your characters into the
Mm-hmm.
fantasy world. You start off in the world that we're all familiar with, and then you're introduced into the fantasy world. And think how much fun and how, if you're an author, how many different storylines you can have about
Mm-hmm.
where you go with that once these characters are introduced
Or
into a
even
different world.
it, pulling them from another world into our world.
Right. Right.
How is that going to look? When I did this time travel one, they went to 1813 first, which is like no tech.
Mm-hmm.
1922, where, you're kind of starting the industrial portion, to 1987, where, oh no, there are more things, cell phones, that sort of stuff, tracking sort of things. And it's like the further they went into the timeline, the harder it made their job.
Right.
It's the technology. The irony is that technology is what brought them back and able to do it. And so it's like, what are the different aspects that you're wanting to do here? And it gets tricky. Like in my short story that's connected to this, they go to 1650 Ireland. I mean, they're taking tech all the way back. You can't take water. You can't take snacks. You can't take anything because none of that's been invented yet. And the warning labels, what are those? So you can take it so many different directions, but we've got like 2 minutes left, unfortunately. What one nugget would you give somebody who wants to work on world building?
Well, one of the neat aspects of fantasy, if you're a writer or an author, is that it can take you have the ability in the fantasy genre to go wherever your imagination takes you. Mm-hmm. There is nothing too far out there. There is nothing that is too unbelievable, because your readers know it's fantasy. So if you have an idea for world building, if you have an idea for a different kind of world, don't hold back and think, wow, nobody believes that, because that's part of the fantasy scene, and that's the fun part. You can create whatever you want to.
Yeah, part of that's on you as the author. Make it believable.
That's right. Oh, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Yeah. So if you want it to be believable, you got to make it believable. You got to make them believe it. So I guess mine would be to get your basic structure and then jump into the story. Don't spend too much time on the world building, and make sure to write down your laws whenever they pop up so that you're not going against it. If you're writing a series, I might recommend actually writing the whole series before you start publishing, because then you can go back and change something if you need to, and not have to republish a book.
That's the pantser way.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would say. So we're out of time, but I know Mike just had a book launch 2 weeks ago, so check out his book, Cavern of the Veil Queen, Conquest of the Veil, on his website, michaelscottclifton.com. I just had one last night, Chain Reaction. That's currently 99 cents on Kindle. You can check it out. Next week, we're going to be having another guest. This is like a twofer this month. Kelly Lynn Colby will be coming, and her genre is going to be psychic/paranormal fiction. So kind of the creepy part. I actually have reviewed one of her books on here, so I'm pretty excited to have her on. She's high energy, and she's very sweet, and she knows her stuff when it comes to books, especially that type of genre. So I'm pretty excited to have her on. So we'll be here same time next week, same place you found us, either on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube at 1 p.m. Central Time with Kelly Lynn Colby on Psychic Paranormal Fiction. Until next time, happy reading.